Hi, Shay.
Good morning. How are ya?
You're in there early.
Yeah.
Those beautiful filing cabinets. Mm.
Good morning, everyone.
Hello. Hey, Jill, before everybody gets on here, I did order one of those 3-inch button presses. If any of the elementaries want it to make buttons for their teachers.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I got 500 button parts, so.
Oh, wow.
Any place you want to use it.
I'm thinking, yeah, I have a couple ideas in my head.
Okay. Want me to bring it over?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
Who are we still waiting for?
It looks like Brian and Matt.
Oh, yeah.
I just sent Brian the link.
And
Okay.
Mike Berlingo.
Oh, yeah, he's not here.
He did just call me like 2 seconds ago, so I think he's probably logging on.
Okay, I think we're just waiting for Mike now, right?
Yeah.
Yes, and I did just send him a text.
Okay. Thank you, Jill.
Mm-hmm. Shay, do you want to pop your head out around the corner and see if Mike's joining us? He hasn't responded yet.
I can look.
Oh, since he's in conference room 2, he's just right out the door.
I think he's accessing from home because his computer doesn't have a camera here.
Oh,
So
he's
I think
just
we're
trying to
working
log on right now.
Yeah. Oh, there's Brian. How you doing? Good morning, everybody. I forgot to say good morning.
Hey, good morning. Morning, Steve.
Morning.
Morning.
Mike is in our executive session link.
So he's early.
He is. That's a great way to look at it. If anybody is out there watching and wondering, we're going to get started in just a minute.
I actually did just check the Zoom link, and he was not on the invite. I just put it in the link.
That would make a difference.
Yeah.
Whoops.
There he is. Okay.
Morning, Mike.
Morning. Sorry, I only had the link for the Google Meets.
Oh, that's okay. I think a couple of us were struggling to find links this morning. Is everybody ready to get started? Okay, it is 8:06 a.m. Mr. Verlingo, can you call the roll?
Mr. Campbell,
Here.
Ms. Chrysler,
Here.
Hairston,
Here.
Ms. Mooring, Daphne, you're on mute.
Here.
Ms. Pickle Antonio.
I am here.
Okay.
Okay, we are going to start this morning, it looks like, with a discussion of two policies, policy number 8450.01 and policy 2266. I think I'm going to turn it over to you, Mr. Barrett, to lead this discussion.
Yeah, so we went over some guidelines in our policy meeting around face coverings, and we will make sure that we develop a guideline document that really kind of is clear and everybody understands. This is the policy version of that. It's very recent from Neola, and Jill worked to fill in the check marks you see here. So Jill, did you want to talk about this?
Yeah. So we did, just as of yesterday, I received in my email some markups from Eric Johnson. And so as I was looking through some of his,
Hey, Jill, your sound's not very good. It's coming in and out. I don't know if somebody is unmuted right now.
It seems like an internet problem, I think.
Yeah, sometimes we get kicked off and put on guest for some reason, so we're trying to solve that problem.
Okay, we'll give maybe give Jill a minute, or
yeah, we can give her a minute. I can pick up. Oh, there she is.
I think I'm back. Can you hear me now?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So in taking the policy, The way Neola drafted it, it's pretty thorough. It talks about during times of elevated communicable disease, the superintendent will issue guidance and have the ability to activate a policy that would require. It has components specific to staff members and students. The first check mark just, states that face masks and shields will be provided by the district, which we have already provided face masks for all of our staff employees. And that alternatively, they can elect to wear different face coverings in line with what we've heard from Franklin County Public Health. The checkbox following, in addition, the board may require that students shall wear face masks unless they're able to do so for health or developmental reasons. Chose that route because there has been some
Jill, the sound is going in and out again.
Okay, let me try switching computers.
Okay, I wouldn't mind, except that I think this is a conversation that people might want to hear us talking about.
So I can pick up. So when students have the inability or a learning disability where it makes wearing a face mask or a face covering very difficult, we're going to work with the family, and our special education teachers will help with that. It was good that Governor DeWine developed a policy for K-12. There was some debate, around other guidelines that really started with face coverings grades 3 and 12 in the national and local media. We think it's important to have face masks on K-12. We thought preschool was a little bit too difficult. And so as you go down this document, Jill has worked with our attorney, Eric Johnson, to check these boxes. So Jill, I just covered the special ed piece of this.
Oh, okay. Did you finish up the checkbox I was talking about? Is that what you?
I think so.
Wearing face masks unless they're able to do so for health or developmental reasons?
Yeah.
Okay. So the next part goes through if face masks or coverings are required and no exception is applicable, then the student shall be subject to disciplinary action in accordance with board policy. And then it goes on to say that the box we checked, that then the superintendent may have the ability to reassign the student's educational environment to the online virtual platform. So in that instance, when we are able to transition back to the hybrid model, and we would still have the virtual option going at that point if we feel like there's a student that is for no health reasons or other reasons that we would have worked through in a process with them, they're just putting others at risk. And that might be a point when Steve would talk with the parents about reassignment so we can make sure all students and staff were able to maintain safety. We have transportation piece in there that masks are required when students are being transported as well. And so that's something that would be included. And then the next couple parts go through, or the next few bullets go through what, the proper face covering wearing looks like. So fully covering mouth, nose, and chin, fitting snugly across your face, making sure that it is, kind of tied on with straps or elastic or somehow to keep it in place and prevent it from slipping. We also have the box checked that it will be included in the student code of conduct and discipline code. And we do have that worked into our handbook as well. And so we referenced this policy and have added in the section where it said that the superintendent can restrict, we have also or require certain components of the dress code. And then we talk about the health and safety pieces connected to this policy. So there are some exceptions that go through the face coverings. And then it talks a little bit about face shields. I know we've had some questions about face shields that have come through and we've included it in our FAQ documents, but face shields are permitted if there are reasons, allowable exceptions for that mask to not be worn. And so there are some outlines there that it has to wrap around the face and extend below the chin. And that falls in line with the masks that or the shields that Scott Lofton has purchased for the district. So we do have those available for staff members where that's appropriate. And then I think that at the end, it just goes through talking about school nurses, of course, who might be in closer contact with individuals that are experiencing symptoms. And so making sure the full appropriate PPE is being utilized. I'm not sure if you guys have specific questions. I know we're not planning to recommend it for voting until the formal board meeting in August.
I do have a question on page 2, exceptions, item D. Have we researched that to make sure? I mean, to me, that should be able to be vetted at the outset.
Yes. Face mask coverings are in violation of the school's documented safety policies. Yeah, that's something we'll need to take a look at. I want to check those safety policies. I have not done that yet, Daphne. So before we ask you to vote on that, we can get some clarification around that.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question about the type of mask. There's a lot of kids I see especially, but some adults with the buffs.
Mm-hmm.
And so do you think the policy, the language is broad enough to allow for kids, especially the younger ones, to wear the buffs?
So the language itself, I wonder if that's something that we might take a look at in the guidelines. I'm not sure how you guys feel about that. We do have language from Franklin County Public Health that those are allowable. Essentially, they said that there are no restrictions on the face coverings. Anything would work. So I think we can make sure that that's either spelled out in the guidelines, or if you'd like to see us kind of include some examples in the policy, we could maybe work that in, including but not limited to.
Yeah, I only thought about it because of the section about that you read about the tie, that it has to by elastic or tie, and maybe the buff has elastic in it, so that might cover it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But I just was making sure that nothing in the policy prohibited them later on in the guideline.
Okay.
What is the term you're using? A buff?
It's a buff. Yeah, it's like a I can grab one and put it on. It's like a gaiter that you wear around your neck.
A neck gaiter.
And then you can pull it up, and a lot of sports teams, that's what they're wearing because they have mask, can't come on and off and or you drop it in the dirt and stuff like that for baseball. So, I've seen in the neighborhood, even kids riding their bikes and wearing their buffs. So they're considered by the health department to be a suitable covering, but it just makes it so that they don't have to go over their ears, and kind of like another option.
Okay, I've heard gator. I hadn't heard buff. Thank you.
I watched too much Survivor.
And I think, Jennifer, the language, it says be held securely through either tie, elastic, etc. So I think we can work on clarifying that. I'll take a look at the guidelines also, and maybe we'll have an including but not limited to type of example list.
It's great. Thank you.
Okay.
I was going to ask a question, I guess, about communication. And I think having some examples, and even when you get down to the point that you're communicating with families, I think even having some pictures or illustrations would be helpful for people to know what's okay and what's not okay.
Mm-hmm.
My question, I guess, was timing of communication. I know there are still some families who the face coverings are not something that they've been doing as regular practice. And I think that the earlier we can start communicating the details, probably the better, so that they can work with their kids, so that it's not a new experience when they are coming in the buildings.
Sure.
So I was just going to ask, I guess, when are you thinking that there might be more communication going out?
So we are working on another FAQ right now. And Judy has been working on some infographics also. We have one specific to learning expectations in the virtual environment. And then, we do have students coming in and out of the buildings for various reasons. Some are for, required mandatory testing, some, connected to athletics. So we'll have a graphic soon that shows examples of those face coverings, like a little infographic. So we can include that in when our FAQ goes out, and then also get some of those posted around the buildings.
Okay, that's great.
I guess along those lines, to follow up, I wonder if there's some good, and I don't know, but our nurses or guidance counselors or mental health professionals might have some maybe links to videos for parents to help maybe show them. There was a tutorial that, and I don't remember I saw it, or I would send it to you, but like kind of saying, like week 1, like it was like a 4-week step to kind of socializing kids to the masks. And so I just wonder if something like that might be helpful too for parents who don't even know where to start and how to get the kids to wear them. And there was like there was something in there, and I think even one of the guidance counselors may have posted a picture somewhere where like doing just a board game together with masks on, like different things like that to maybe help some of the parents who are just like, we don't even know where to start with this. Our kids haven't been out of the house since April, right?
Right. Yeah, that's a good idea. I know we did, and we've sent out a few FAQ documents, but one of our FAQ documents did recommend that parents start doing some mask training. But I like that idea, Jennifer, of kind of like give them a little bit of a plan that they could work from.
Yeah, because some people might not know exactly what that means.
What
so it's
might
like,
look
where do I start? How do I do it? And
Yeah.
like, check the box. Is there fun games we can do to make it like sticker charts, things like that? I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. That's a good idea.
So as we talked about in our policy meeting, we talked about kind of building a culture, especially around elementary and middle school, around wearing masks and how important it is to keep yourself safe and others safe. And I think our principals are planning to kind of really kind of develop some ideas with parents around all this. So all these are great ideas. And so, we have, it's important to continue to communicate. I remember the FAQ touched on practicing, I think, wearing masks, but at the end of the day, we have significant communication that we can get out to help with that and to just build some momentum around doing it. I know when we were, wearing masks earlier in the summer, it was hard to get used to, but now it's something that's kind of unconscious. Now you leave your office, you put your mask on. So
we were talking about that at work yesterday, Steve. It started out so awkward, and now it's like second nature. We've been back to work. We've been working the whole time, but a lot of our staff has been back since May. And same thing, where it used to be awkward, and you were just like, "Oh my gosh, you're in this mask," and now people are talking about like, where did you get your mask? It's so cool. Did you make it? Where's the fabric? But
Right.
it's become kind of a thing, but it is like almost like second nature when you get used to it. So hopefully if parents are reading the FAQs and they're doing the training, then by the time the kiddos get into the school here, when we're in the hybrid model, a lot of them will be used to having it on.
I will also add that we have a 10-page kind of health and safety guidance document for when, we come back into the hybrid model. And part of the face covering section has a very structured mask break, system in place that, we've gotten approval from FCPH to work in some mask breaks. And so we have it kind of outlined for a frequency, and how many times per day for how long, and it kind of, increases and decreases based on the grade level. So, certainly once we have students back in the buildings, we have some additional, components that come into play.
Yeah. One of the things we might want to do too is I've noticed just having to have given some presentations with the mask on, depending on the type of mask, it can be varying levels of and degrees of difficulty. So it seems like the medical masks that they sell, we might want to have some of those ordered additionally for the teachers in the classroom. So if you're doing a read along, or if kids are getting up to make a presentation to a group, and they have the the heavier, cloth mask on that they can kind of switch out and have some resources, because that can be, you don't realize it until you're actually, presenting with the mask on, that it can be a little like, the breaths and the type of cloth that you have, and it can cause a little bit of anxiety in that moment. So that might be something additional too, that we have, that kids, depending on what they come with, they can switch out if they have to speak out loud or do any sort of presenting.
Yeah, we do have several of those, lighter weight medical masks that you get when you go to the doctor's office or the hospital.
Right.
So we'll have those available. And then I will say, I don't know how you guys feel about it, but the staff masks that we purchased, they're pretty breathable and pretty, thin, and I haven't felt muffled in them. So, we'll have some options for teachers. I think that's a great idea to be thinking about.
Yeah, the one thing I want to point out too is we're working with our bus drivers. We're getting some guidance on them wearing masks maybe as kids get on, but one worry we have is their glasses, if they wear glasses, getting fogged up from the masks as they're driving. So we're working on some ideas around that as well.
And Rain-X, if you buy Rain-X, it works really well for glasses too. So, which is also something that they might have in the bus garage for the windshields. But,
Yeah. Oh, so your glasses won't fog up if you put that on?
mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. Okay. It's a good idea.
Okay, any additional discussion about the face covering policy? Okay, Jill or Steve, can you talk to us about the non-discrimination on the basis of sex and education programs or activities policy?
So we're going to turn this over to Shay Reed. She's been working hard with our attorneys on this policy and has really studied it and done a lot of training around it. So thanks for being here, Shay.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been, you guys might have heard in your other employment, this is something that we've been waiting on from the U.S. Department of Education for quite some time. It's been in discussion, I think, since about 2018. And the final regulations were actually released this May. So Sue Wieging and I are designated as the Title IX coordinators for the district, and we began training over the summer to learn about the new regulations. This is a replacement policy. We, of course, had a non-discrimination policy in place already. So this is an update based on the new regulations that were released from the Department of Education. And there's some pretty significant updates. There are some hefty changes in terms of the law and the regulations. Some of the things to note as you're going through the policy, it's definitely one that'll probably take you a little bit of time to get through and really digest if you haven't had time to do that yet. I know it came out really late. Neola just released their draft policy for us, I think last Friday. So we worked with Bricker and used their markup and did some selections in terms of some of the options that they gave us to come up with the policy that you have now. There were some changes to not only the definition of sexual harassment in the policy, some expansions there, but the practical application of how this will work in districts has been changed pretty significantly. What they're calling the process once a file is initiated is a grievance process. And so in terms of what that looks like for our district, what used to happen is there was a Title IX coordinator who handled the majority of those complaints that came in for Title IX. The grievance process requires that we have multiple people involved in the complaint process and investigation process now. So not only will there be a Title IX coordinator who is kind of the person who oversees the complaint process and the grievance and investigation process, but also we have to have people identified as separately as investigators. We also have to have people identified as decision makers. So there's not just one person who's kind of handling the whole entire grievance and investigation process. There are going to be multiple people that are involved. There are also requirements now for those people to all receive training. And so Bricker is continuing to offer those trainings in conjunction with the ESC so that we can get all of our staff members or whoever we choose to be those, to fill those roles, to get them the proper training. There are also requirements that we provide the training information to the public so that they can see how we've been trained, what information our staff members receive. We anticipate using Public Schoolworks to be able to provide some of that information to our staff members. There's also some pretty significant changes in terms of how we handle the process for both the complainants and the respondents. There are protections now for the respondents. We've always had the requirement of providing support to complainants once a complaint is made, and if we feel that's necessary, those supports are also now provided to respondents as well, because of course, we have to be non-biased, and we want to make sure that both parties have the support that they need throughout that complaint process. Timelines are pretty important in terms of the new grievance process. As we're moving through the investigation, we have to provide both the complainant and the respondent with the opportunity to review the evidence that we've collected, and also the opportunity to respond to that evidence. They can provide additional information, they can ask questions, and we can take a look at their questions and determine if we need to do further investigation. So it's really more of an interactive process between our investigators, our Title IX coordinators, and the complainant and respondent throughout the process. So as you'll see in the policy, there are timelines that are attached to some of those processes. Like once we've completed our investigation, we have to turn all of that information over to both parties and give them 10 days to respond to that information. So the process potentially could be prolonged a little bit with these, the back and forth that will happen throughout. Trying to think if I've hit the highlights of most of the changes. Again, if you have questions, definitely feel free to read over it. Let me know if I can, if I can answer any of those questions that you might have. It is a pretty hefty process that we're going to be embarking upon with the non-discrimination on the basis of sex policy and investigation.
Thanks, Shay. I'm really happy with the work Shay is doing on all of these policies, but also the interactive processes of FMLA, ADA, workman's comp, and now Title IX. I think it's really important for districts to have a plan, protocols, routines that we regularly check in with employees that are maybe out on FMLA, giving them the guidance they need and the understanding they need. So Shay, thanks so much. I know this policy just came out, I think Monday, right? Friday. So we already had our policy meeting, unfortunately. So thanks for allowing us to present it today. We'd like to have it on our agenda for August 20th.
It's Daphne. On page 13, starting on page 13, it appears that there are a lot of options that have no check marks. So is this kind of like the base document, and then you will get us a selected document?
So we would anticipate including all of those. I can add check marks to those if I'm trying to get to the right page, Daphne.
Yeah, it's starting on 13.
Consequences.
Yeah, but then all the pages after that have, where there's selections, there's no selections.
Yeah, they would all be included, so we can add check marks on those.
So Shay, you started to kind of take Neola's and make us our own. So there was copies of two.
Yeah,
right.
I'm looking at the second one.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Because if they're not marked, then they're not included.
Right. We will get that fixed.
Okay. And there's a typo on the phone number back on page 8, I think. I know you just got this, but.
Yep. Nope, that's good.
Mrs. Reed, can you talk about resources and staffing that you have to work with a policy like this? I guess my question is, do you feel like, I mean, it's one thing to adopt a policy, it's another to actually live it. Do you feel like you have the resources and the staff that you need to adequately enforce the policy?
I mean, I'm going to be honest, it's definitely a challenge. I think that certainly in terms of the Title IX coordinator responsibilities, Sue and I feel pretty confident in being able to manage that process. I would envision, because we need, I think the investigator piece is probably the most challenging part of what we have to do, because these policies are really involved. They're very detailed. There are a lot of timelines that you have to meet. And so, and fortunately, these type of complaints don't come up very often. And so if you're not in the habit of doing them on a regular basis, to put somebody in a position to have to meet these type of requirements it's a challenge. So the investigator piece is probably my biggest concern. Of course, anyone who's a part of this process will receive the training. We do have a responsibility to ensure that anyone who's participating in the process is non-biased, which is something that throughout the conversations with Bricker, they reinforce, because there are lots of different ways that we as staff members could be considered biased against either a complainant or a respondent. So what that means is there's really not the opportunity for us to only identify one person to serve in any of the roles, because if any of those people would have a bias in some way, we'd have to eliminate them from the process. So I think that's likely the biggest challenge, is just making sure that we have enough people to fill each of those individual roles so that we can meet the requirements. We also, for the decision maker role, we have to have at least 2 people, because there's an appeal process as well. And so of course you can't be the decision maker for the actual complaint and the decision maker for the appeal. So, it makes sense to me that probably Steve and Jill would be able to fill those roles. Again, Sue and I fill the coordinator roles, and then determining who it makes the most sense to identify as investigators and get them trained is again probably my biggest concern in us being able to fully implement and appropriately staff this. One of the suggestions that was made by Bricker, and Steve and I had just a quick conversation about it probably a couple months ago when it first came out, was we can use a third party to fill some of the roles, which may be appropriate in some cases. So we'll continue to talk about that as well.
That might be helpful as we get started with it, just to kind of learn the intensity, to get a nice structured process in place, and also to allow us to kind of, certainly these are always unpredictable, but to get a sense for how many investigations will need to be done. So.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you under the previous regulations, I completed investigations and it is extremely time consuming. So, and these are, they've definitely expanded the requirements, and I understand why, but it will certainly be a time consuming process, once we get it started.
And we've used investigators for different things from the ESC, and different law firms have recommended people. So there are folks out there that can help with that. And so, yeah, it is. And sometimes that's the best way to go, because then you can kind of, remove it from the organization and get a neutral, unbiased person looking at all the facts. So. But definitely, Shay, you're going to need help with that, and we know that, and we'll make sure you get it.
Any other questions or comments from anyone on the non-discrimination policy? Okay, I appreciate all of the hard work, Mrs. Reed. I know this is a big change, and it sounds like you've had a lot of conversation and a lot of thought about how to actually implement it. So I appreciate that very much.
Thank you.
Any further discussion at all about either of these 2 policies before we move on to the board action items? Okay, we are on section 2 then, letter A, human resources. And it looks like there's 5 items for action. If there's not an objection to taking those 5 items together, is there a motion to approve items number 1 through 5 under human resources?
I'll move.
Mr. Campbell, and is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Chrysler,
Yes.
any discussion about any of these items?
Can I just say, we're thrilled with the work Shay Reed and our principals and hiring teams have done. We had new teacher orientation this week, and we had some great discussions on Google Meet with our new teachers. They're so excited to get going. And so great job, Shay, and to our principals. We had some of the most engaging, inspiring discussions that we've had in a long time, and it was exciting.
Yeah, I think this is always one of the most exciting times of year, right? At the beginning of a school year, and we have all of our new staff and employees. And I know it feels a little bit different this year because some of this is being done in virtual environments, and all of you are so extremely busy trying to figure out how to keep people safe and how to do all of these things in a virtual environment. But I don't want us to lose sight of what you just said, Mr. Barrett. I mean, this is a really exciting time for all school districts. It was good to hear that the new staff and teacher orientation went so well. So thank you to everybody that was involved in that. And thank you, Mrs. Reed. I don't think we ever actually had a time to acknowledge all of the work that you and your staff did in recruiting and hiring all of these new employees. But thank you to you and to all the principals and all of the other people who were involved in the interviews and the hiring process this year.
And I just also want to thank our curriculum team, Tia Holloman, Sharon Suriano, Aaron Schmidt, and Jill for the work they did. Lisa Kelly was on there. Over 2 days, these presentations and these interactive discussions were really amazing on mental health, on curriculum mapping, on building relationships with kids. And even though we were on a Zoom, our new teachers were using the chat box to follow up on conversations, and it was very interactive. There was a lot of reflection. There was some journaling. There was some articles that we read on virtual learning and building a culture and climate of relationships. So we're trying to make the best of this, and I'm so proud of our team for all they're doing to be nimble and to kind of think through this in a different way, because we really want to be in front of our new teachers. We want to meet them face to face, and we weren't able to do this time, but our team did a great job, finding a way to make new teacher orientation happen. Our union president, Jenny Palguda, spoke with her team, and they provided lunches on the first day. So it was more of a drive-through lunch, but that was a nice thing too. So thank you.
Okay, any additional discussion about any of these items? Okay, Mr. Verlingo, can you call the roll, please?
Ms. Piccolo Antonio,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Ms. Chrysler,
Yes.
Mr. Hairston,
Yes.
Ms. Mooring.
Yes.
Okay, it looks like we have 8 items for action under educational pupil programs and services. If there's not an objection to taking those 8 items together, is there a motion to approve items number 1 through 8 under letter B?
Moved.
Mrs. Mooring, is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Campbell, any discussion about these items?
Items on this agenda because of timing.
Yes, yes, it is all about timing. I can speak to all of the software programs. As you see, they are being paid for out of CARES Act funding. And very much, Daphne, are related to timing because we need to be able to make the purchases on the software and get them integrated with our technology systems. So then they're ready to go for our trainings in the next couple of weeks, and, you know, teachers to, you know, take off at the beginning of the school year with them. So it's been a lot of time and energy has gone into selecting these tools. There was a long process. We worked with PDAC in the spring to, you know, really survey what were the tools that all of our teachers were using. In the spring, most of these tools were free because of how companies were working with school districts to, you know, support us in the need to be as nimble as we could in the situation. And so we, you know, vetted the resources, took a look at the programs that were used most often. I mean, teachers were so creative in finding the resources that they used in the spring when we collected things. I mean, there were dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of different tools. So I feel like we have a good range of tools that will support our teachers. Explore Learning Gizmos, that's a math and science teacher program, which includes digital simulations and problem solving. The Amplified It brings in our Google Suite and upgrades us to the enterprise version, which sadly is not actually released until September. But it brings in the opportunity for teachers to use breakout rooms and hand raising, and there's an attendance feature and the ability to change the backgrounds and things like that. So we're excited to have that version. Edpuzzle is an interactive video lesson software that, you know, will be used district-wide for all contents. Lexia Core 5 is something that we previously have used in the district in our title buildings, and it's an excellent instructional tool that reinforces the 6 main components of balanced literacy and will support our, you know, it's available K-8. And so it's a nice supplement for the instruction they'll be receiving digitally. Then it's also an adaptive program. So it's kind of an individualized leveling out where the kiddos are, and then it takes them from there on support lessons and activities. And so the adaptive nature of that is something that we really think will be beneficial for our kids while they're learning and working at home. The Overdrive Sora is a digital access for a wide variety of leveled quality texts for our kids. We will have some distribution processes throughout the distance learning model, but this will allow our kids to have high quality texts available to them digitally also, K-12. And then the last two I was gonna touch on, Pear Deck is a really fantastic interactive Google Slides software that allows for formative assessments, and there's, you know, reflection and data analysis, and it's a very interactive tool for kids to be engaging with their teachers in during lessons. Make Music is specific for our music program, and it's a music learning software that will be used K-12 also. There are 2 other softwares that we will be using that are not on the agenda because they were lower in price, but one is Screencastify, and many of our teachers use Screencastify. It's a screen recorder and a video maker. And then Seesaw is a specialized learning management system for the primary grades, and so it's will help the parents of our youngest learners because it's much more kid friendly for posting and interacting with our younger learners. Very intuitive for young kiddos. So that's kind of a rundown of the programs that you see on here.
And I think it's important to know a lot of research went in and a lot of collaboration with teachers went into these applications so that we can make learning at home as interactive as possible. And but it also be used in the classroom when we're able to return in our hybrid model. Mm-hmm. And so I appreciate the hard work. I mean, it takes a lot of time going through these tutorials, looking at things, getting a password from the company so that you can actually vet the software. We don't just buy things, you know, crick them in a box and hand them to teachers. There's a lot of development. There's a lot of research and a lot of hard work and dedication. Our curriculum team was here last night to 8 o'clock, just working on things, mapping out things with teachers. So really proud of all the work that's going on around the distance learning option that we're beginning school with. And all of these things will be able to shift to the hybrid model as well.
And I will also add that many of these are the recommendations that came from our task force work with teachers also.
I have a question that is probably for Mr. Verlingo. And I don't remember if we've asked this question before or not, but is the treasurer's office able to keep track of the spending that we're doing specifically related to the pandemic? I think that would be, I know that may be some additional work to keep track of that in some separate way, but I think that it's important that we're able to communicate clearly, what those purchases are, what those costs are.
Yes, we have been putting expenditures related to PPE and some other activity into a specific code in building services, so that once the funds have been established, we will move those dollars into the funds that they relate to. So for example, the money that received from the state, in addition to the CARES funding, the state funding we received has a much shorter time frame where it can be used, and it must be used by December of this year. So we will be applying as much of the cost as possible to that fund, as opposed to the CARES Act, which has a life that extends to 2022. So yes, everything that's being spent incrementally for these items will be tracked and placed in the appropriate fund.
And that includes the curricular spending too. And I guess I'm not asking, I know you're thinking about it from the perspective of making sure that we use the separate monies to cover those things. I'm thinking about it, I guess, from a little bit different perspective of how we communicate externally what our spending has been that's been related to the pandemic. So I don't know if it's, it sounds like it's the same items though.
Yes, but if there are any headcount related costs, for example, incremental stipends or, payments that are being made for this, then we will need to look at each of those and account for them appropriately, or at least identify them.
Okay, thanks. Any additional comments or questions about any of these items? Okay, Mr. Verlingo, can you call the roll, please?
Ms. Moran?
Yes.
Ms. Piccolo Antonio?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Ms. Chrysler?
Yes.
Mr. Hairston?
Yes.
Sorry, my dog is barking, you guys. Let's see, is there I don't know if that's completely taking up the sound. Okay, is there a motion that we go into executive session pursuant to revised code 121.22G4 for the purpose of preparing for conducting or reviewing negotiations or bargaining sessions with employees?
I'll move. Jennifer Chrysler.
Mrs. Chrysler, is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Hairston, any discussion at all? I would note for anyone who's out there watching that after we take the roll on the executive session motion, we will go into executive session, which is in a separate virtual environment. We will be coming back to this live stream, this YouTube live stream Zoom environment after we are done with executive session. But there will be no board action taken, except we have to come back to adjourn the meeting. So if you're watching, you're free to keep watching the live stream, but the only reason that we will be coming back is to adjourn the meeting. Any other discussion? Okay, Mr. Verlingo, can you call the roll, please?
Hairston,
Yes.
Ms. Mooring,
Yes.
Ms. Pickle Antonio,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Ms. Chrysler.
Yes.
Okay. Does everybody have the link to the Google Meet where we are meeting in executive session?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. See everybody over there. Thanks.
Thank you.
Someone just sent me a video of the band playing outside, socially distanced, and they sound amazing, and thanking us for letting them come back.
It's good.
I think we are all back. Okay, we are all back. It is 10:21 a.m. and we're back out of executive session. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll move.
Mrs. Chrysler, is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Campbell, any discussion? Okay, Mr. Verlingo, can you call the roll?
Ms. Chrysler,
Yes.
Mr. Hairston,
Yes.
Ms. Mooring,
Yes.
Ms. Pickle Antonio,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes.
Okay, it's 10:22 a.m. and we are adjourned.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a good day.
You too.
Again.
Thanks.